Good afternoon. If you're waiting for the PI education webinar for December to start, we've got just a few minutes before we go live. I did want to hop on real quick and let you know that we're just about to go live. So bear with us. We'll go live right at 1 o'clock. Thanks for joining us. One minute before we go live. Good afternoon. I'm Hal Humphreys, and welcome to the PI Education webinar for December 2017. We are thrilled you're here. I am joined today by I'm joined today by Eli Rosenblatt. Eli is an investigator out in Portland, Oregon. He is a good friend. I have enjoyed his company over the years. He's a solid investigator, and we're thrilled to have him here today for the webinar. We have been talking about these webinars and how best to execute them, how best to do them, how best to deliver them. Our kind of stated goal is to do one webinar a month. Our plan is to do them on the fourth Thursday of every month. Obviously, last month, Thanksgiving kind of got in the way of that. We decided to do this one on the third Thursday of the month because of Christmas and the fact that nobody seems to be in the office between Christmas and New Year's. So we're here today. For the rest of the year, we'll be doing these on the fourth Thursday of every month. And you can kind of count on that. We'll be sending out emails announcing them as they come up. But today we have Eli Rosenblatt with us. He is, just describe yourself for us, Eli.
All right. Well, I'm a licensed investigator here in Portland, Oregon, and I have more than 15 years of experience working as a professional investigator. I got my start doing criminal defense investigations in the San Francisco Bay Area in the early 90s, right out of college. I landed an internship at a law firm where I was doing work for attorneys who do death penalty appeals. So that's how I got my start in investigations. And I took a handful of years off to do other things, including have some kids. And that kept me very busy for a while. Went back to investigation in the fall of 2007. So here in Oregon, I've been at it for more than 10 years and loving every minute of it. I am someone who self-identifies as a total nerd. So I have over the years supplemented my investigation practice with a whole lot of tech stuff. During the years that I wasn't doing investigation full-time, I was doing custom installation of computer and phone networks and stuff like that. So I've had my hands in some sort of tech stuff for a long time. And the investigation work that I was doing kind of naturally fed into computer forensics. So that's another side of my practice. I was trained and certified as a Mac and iOS certified forensic examiner. I don't do as much of that work anymore. I kind of farm that out usually, but it's certainly part of my practice.
Right. And I will say this just for the crowd. Eli has been my go-to guy for computer forensic work over the years. Anytime we have a Mac involved in a case that I'm working on, I usually end up sending it to Eli in some form or fashion. He's really good at that. Before we go much further, I've got to get rid of the disclaimers. I've been getting notes from the crew saying, do the disclaimers, do the disclaimers. This is not legal advice. We're not attorneys. We're not lawyers. The statements we make here are our opinions. They're not necessarily the opinion of Storyboard EMP, PI Education or Pursuit Magazine. This is a free webinar. It's provided to give you a chance to, number one, hear what some experts have to say about different things. Number two, ask questions. This is your chance to chime in and ask questions. The other thing I want to say is, as we do these webinars, we put out there, if there's a topic you want us to discuss, let us know. You can put it in the chat bar on your YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, there'll be a live chat feature over there to the right of the window. You can post questions there. You can suggest topics for future webinars there. We're always excited to hear ideas from new webinars. If you have something to say, if you're an expert in an area that we haven't covered, or even if we've covered it before, you've got a different take on it, reach out to us. We'd love to have you join us on one of these webinars. It is just about Christmas time, and the entire crew here at PI Education and Storyboard says thank you. Stephanie, our manager, Ben, our compliance director, Doug, our marketing director, Jim, the best business partner a guy could ask for. We all thank you. We're glad you're here. We appreciate you being fans. We appreciate you being customers. And a special hat tip today to Stephanie Mitchell. Stephanie is PI Education's manager. She takes care of everything that happens on PI Education. If you have a problem, she's the person most likely that's going to solve it. 2017 marks 10 years for Stephanie with PI Education. So a big hat tip to Stephanie for the hard work she does. I know if you've ever dealt with PI Education, you have dealt with Stephanie and you've been better for it. So today, Eli and I are going to be talking about how to stay sane and how to get paid. The sanity part is one that Eli and I kind of joked about back and forth, but I think it's important. It really is. I don't think people take the time to think about taking care of their mind and their body and those things. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. We're also going to talk about how to stay sane professionally, some tips and tricks you can use in your practice today to keep yourself more organized, to make sure that you get paid, those kind of things. So we're going to start off talking about the personal stuff. Excuse me. Eli knows that I'm on Twitter. A lot of you know that I'm on Twitter. Last week, my wife, Kim Green, posted an article to Pursuit Magazine. And it was about life hacking and how some people will steal something or claim something that wasn't theirs. And Eli brought up a good point. There are lots of people that watch Life Hack and they're doing the work. Totally understand that. The problem is one of our PIs, and we work in a business where people like to discover secrets and find out little details about other people that they may not want anyone to know about. One of the PIs on Twitter that we've had a long-term friendship and relationship with on Twitter outed me because he said another life hack is stealing text from another blog you have. And he provided a link to another blog that I have. And that blog is called Exquisite Corpse Pose. And I came out and said, you know what? We're just going to get out in front of this and say, yeah, I am quite possibly the only yogi PI in the country. And I'm okay with that because as Eli identifies as a bit of a nerd, I do too. So first off, we'll talk about personally, how do you take care of yourself? Eli, I'm going to let you take it from there.
All right. Well, before I do that, I do want to have a huge thank you and a shout out to PI Education and to Hal and to Storyboard. You folks do fantastic work overall, and not only are you consistently providing great educational materials and programs for all of us out here doing the work all the time, um, you're ahead of the curve. You're figuring out what we need to know next, and that's just invaluable. I think this is a really good time to be discussing these things. These are some important lessons, important ideas to dialogue about. Um, because this time of year especially can be super stressful. When I first got into the business, I had some investigators that I worked with telling me that they completely shut down their practice during this time of year because it was just maddening to wait by the phone and not get any calls, and then all of a sudden have a huge deadline be slapped on you right away. Um, I'll say that really for me is consistently the nature of the business, that you sit and you wait and then it floods, and then you sit and you wait and nothing happens, and then it starts flooding again. um, there may be certainly, well, I know there are professional investigators out there who have arranged, because of their particular job role, or they've gotten themselves into some sort of great um, position at a firm, where it's super consistent and reliable. That's not the world that most of us unfortunately live in.
Yeah,
Most of you out there.
most of us, and I'm assuming everybody in the class here, most of us, we work in small firms. We're maybe solo practitioners. I know for me, and I'm guessing Eli for you, sometimes everything falls on our shoulders for our investigative business, so it can be time consuming. And the feast or famine thing it's real. The
Yeah,
struggle is
ab-
real, as they say.
absolutely. And that's a major contributor to people's stress levels. Um, the number of investigators that I work with who regularly experience some sort of burnout is unfortunately super high. Um, and it's especially hard because not only are you needing to keep up your skills as an investigator, most of us own our own businesses. Um, a good percentage of us anyway. And um, you're not just needing to keep up your skills as an investigator, you need to keep up your skills as a salesperson and as an administrator, and all the other managerial kinds of things that come with owning your own business. So that makes it especially hard. The kinds of practice that you are able to put in place for yourself, be they yoga, tai chi, CrossFit, swimming, whatever it is, are so essential. The image of the lone wolf who just sits in their car, doing surveillance, or who is out there taking serious risks, scoffing the law. That image is, not only is it bankrupt, I think it's damaging to the profession overall. Um, the number of people who I work with who take this very seriously has grown, a lot in recent years. And I know that, Hal, you have a very serious yoga practice. I have a couple of other investigator friends who have a similar practice. I don't do a whole lot of yoga. I do it from time to time. I do more tai chi and swimming. Um, and certainly, there's, again, CrossFit, weightlifting. But the only thing I would say about that is that I think it's important to have a practice in addition to whatever kind of exercise you're doing. I think that's why yoga is so good, to have a practice that is reflective, meditative, that's taking you out of being in your mind all the time, that's taking you out of the pressures and stresses that you have in the rest of your life. And that can certainly come from working out in the gym, weightlifting, what have you. But I think that the advantage of something like yoga or Tai Chi, and certainly meditation, is that it dials everything down. Um, most of the investigators I work with, I would say the vast majority, work on cases that are super stressful. They are dealing with people's lives and livelihoods. They are criminal defense cases where people's lives are literally on the line. They're workplace cases where there's intense deadlines and all kinds of different people that you have to watch out for and please. So, there's a whole lot weighing on you. A meditative or reflective practice of some sort can help you work your way through that, and do that in a more in a smooth way, and in a way that's not going to stress you out in the long run and make you impossible to deal with for your colleagues. Um, the other piece of that, though, I think that is important is that it's not just the kind of work that can be so stressful, it's the pace. Like we were saying before, you can't necessarily, when you own your own business, you can't necessarily determine when and how the calls are going to come in. And so sometimes, I had a period over the summer, for instance, myself, where I had basically one case that was kind of lingering in the background. And it gave me a whole lot of time to do other work and, do some house projects and so forth.
And catch up on the latest episodes of The Walking Dead.
Yes. And white collar and suits. I'm not going to go there. But yeah, it gave me it was a trough. It gave me a time to kind of just reflect on where my business was going and what was coming up next. And then boom, I had, just now in this last couple months, I had more cases than I've ever had in my practice. And that was a super hockey stick. I mean, it was like, we didn't gradually ramp up. It was literally 1 week and then the next I was on fire. So, but I was really happy to have taken that time because it gave me both some clarity about what I needed to do next and some focus, some energy that let me figure out where my practice was going. And in fact, I'm now opening. I'm getting licensed in Washington State, so I opened another arm of my business, not just in Oregon, but in Washington. And I know I could not have done that if I hadn't taken the time to step back and look at my practice from a 10,000
Thousand
foot
foot
view, if
view,
you will.
yeah. I think one of the things that a lot of people don't think about, and you kind of touched on this. I'm a criminal defense investigator by trade. That's the bulk of what I do. And these cases are, as you said, we're playing with live ammunition. They're real people's lives on the line, and we're not talking about just like it's going to impact their life. Their actual life might be on the line. So the stakes are high. Everybody in the team is committed and they care deeply about the work that we do. It has meaning. Everybody's in. What I find sometimes is, especially in the criminal defense world, people get so sucked into the work and it has so much meaning that they then neglect themselves in pursuit of doing a really good job. The problem is it's a false narrative.
Yeah,
You have to take care of yourself first.
yeah,
And I don't want to sit here and beat the yoga dead horse with a stick for too long. But I can tell you when I have a daily practice, I will take at least 30 minutes, if not an hour every day and do a yoga practice. For me, that is a meditative process. It also moves the body a little bit, which is always nice. Um, but the chance to stop, even if it's just for 20 minutes a day, just stop, calm your mind, stop the whirling, stop the craze of thoughts and deadlines and things that have to be done for 20 minutes. That's not going to ruin anybody's life. That's not going to ruin anybody's job, and it will calm you down. So I think that's be it yoga, meditation, tai chi, a combination of those three. uh, Eli and I have a mutual friend who lives in New York, and I know for a fact that his releases, he goes to CrossFit and he works out like a fiend. That's how he gets that thing done. Whatever it is for you, take some time to take care of yourself. You have to. If you
yeah.
don't, If you don't, you can't take care of anybody else. You can't be good for other people.
Yeah, and the evidence is super, super clear on this, that the taking of that time out of your schedule, making that time, makes you so much more productive and makes the rest of your time it just be spent so much more fluidly and productively. Yeah, and it can be super hard, especially when you own your own practice, to carve that time out. Um, I can't, I don't know, Hal, if you do your yoga at the same studio every time. I know you're traveling a lot too, and so you have to find a way to make that work for yourself, when you
So
don't necessarily have a routine the way that lots of other professionals do.
yeah, I don't have a set routine. And again, anyone who's in the class today, we're private investigators. Our schedules are not 9 to 5. If you're doing surveillance work, the schedule is what the schedule is. I mean, you may be out to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. The work I do takes me kind of all over the country. In the past year, I've practiced in uh, yoga studios in Tampa, Florida, Washington, D.C., Boston, Washington State, kind of all over the country. And what you do is you commit to, I'm going to take X number of minutes a day to do a thing, whatever it is. For me, it has been yoga. Um, I will find a studio. I will go to a private lesson. If I can't find any of those things, take some time in the hotel room and do what we call hotel yoga. Just move through some poses or whatever it is you do. If you do push-ups and that's your thing, do the push-ups in your hotel room. It's totally fine. Let's move on and talk about the some more taking care of yourself business. Eating on the road when you're doing surveillance work, when you're traveling, doing those things. That has been one of my hardest things to deal with is road food. Eli, you got some
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
yeah, I do. I would first of all just totally agree that it has been the pain of my existence and many other professional investigators that I work with. Just that, first of all, knowing that the vast majority of what you're finding out there is junk food because you're moving from one place to another quickly and you can't always plan ahead to where you're going to eat, much less plan ahead to bring something that's healthy. And I don't know if you how can folks see what I'm looking at here now, my screen?
Your screen is shared up on the thing,
Yeah,
so I'll click that.
perfect. So I went ahead and made a bunch of links to pages that are about healthy eating while you're on the road. In addition to stuff about yoga and Tai Chi and other stuff. But yeah, to the extent that you can, planning ahead for um, how you're going to avoid junk food when you're out doing surveillance or when you're moving from one place to another to go do interviews or serve subpoenas. Um, the extent that you can plan ahead for that, it's so much better. We also put some stuff in here about sleep, and how important it is to get really good sleep. Now, I know for a lot of us, sleep when we're parents is super hard. Surprisingly enough, I'd say more than half of the investigators I work with here in the Portland area are parents of young kids or teens. And so, yeah, they know all too well about sleep deprivation. Um, and so I just included some things in there about how important it is to get good sleep.
Yeah, and I'm the parent of 0 children, and I find it almost impossible, to understand how it is you do what you do and deal with kids and that business. Luckily, Kim works with me, here at PI Education and Pursuit Magazine. We do a lot of things together professionally, um, so our life is kind of easy that way, but it makes no sense to me how people do this work and maintain a family. It's very difficult to do. Moving on to cultivating, maintaining relationships and interests that are unrelated to the investigative business, guys. If your friends are all private investigators, who tells stories?
Yeah, that's a real issue, I know, for professionals in all kinds of areas. But I think it's especially important for investigators because our world can be so insular, and it can be so challenging to navigate how to help people in the work we do. So for me, there's two sides to it. One is that I have been trying for years to cultivate relationships with other investigators that I can rely on and I can, trust to do work with me, and that I can unwind with, where we can talk about cases or clients and, just kind of shop talk in a way that blows off some steam. But then also have folks that are important to me that I spend real quality time with, other than my kids, my spouse, who are not in this world at all and can feed other parts of me. Because I know for myself, there may be other investigators out there who are really different than this, but I know for myself, if I am just focused on uh, only the work that I'm doing and only the kind of work that I'm doing, I'll go completely bonkers.
Well, not only
Uh,
not only that, you'll go bonkers, but you become a complete bore to people around you. They get tired of hearing about the cases. They get tired of hearing about the things. If you're at a dinner party, people are going to say, "Oh, you're a private investigator," and a lot of questions ensue. But like your family, like, "Geez, I don't want to hear about Jim Bob's case again." We're
yeah,
tired of hearing about
exactly,
it.
exactly.
Yeah, and the other thing that one of the things that Kim and I do on a fairly regular basis is we will invite disparate groups of people over to the house to have dinner. So we will invite two young Republicans and two young Democrats and put them at the table and start a conversation, just see where it goes, just to get feed our minds that way. And that's one of the things that I've gotten kind of a kick out of the new blog that I've started, which is basically a digital personal journal over at exquisitecorpsepose.com. Um, I've been able to bring in some people from the yoga world and have them meet some people from the PI world, and it's really interesting to see how they interact and how they get on and how they don't get on. You know, either side will say those people are absolutely crazy, and
Absolutely.
they're right and they're not right, and it's all good. But part of what I think, and I think the holidays is a perfect time to talk about this because we're all kind of focused on family. We're all worried about the end of the year deadlines, things we have to get done. Um, our eating habits change. We start eating more. All these things happen around the holidays, and I think it's a perfect time to kind of talk about some of these things and deal with them. So,
Yeah.
um, I think that last point on the personal thing of just cultivating relationships with interesting people that you might not spend time around otherwise is a great idea.
Should we talk a little bit about staying sane professionally and some of the things you can do to make sure that you're not getting into hot water with your clients?
I think that's a great idea, and I think we should talk about how we can make sure that we get paid.
Excellent. Can I? I'll just go ahead and share here. Can folks see this?
Yes.
Okay. So I think one of the first things to remember about how to stay sane in your practice is to really keep in mind, first of all, how fast things change in this business. And second of all, how the expectations on us are huge. Our clients depend on us not to just get little pieces of information for them. That's certainly, one of the most important things we do. We go and we ferret out little nuggets that are important for them, but we also provide them with value that value and information and a whole world of information that um, helps them to do a huge amount of life-changing work for them and their clients. So I thought that this was a useful demonstration to help us just kind of put things in perspective. You cannot get bogged down. You cannot get uh, you cannot let yourself get worked up too much, because you weren't able to find that one little nugget, or because you found what you thought was important, and it turns out for your client or the attorney you work for or whomever you're sending the information to, that it turned out to be not what they needed, or only part of what they needed. This is the reality that unfortunately so many of us, investigators and paralegals and other professionals like that, have to deal with. Is so much of what we put our hearts and souls into, and our blood, sweat, and tears, ends up being something that, yeah, sorry, not useful, not something we're going to end up needing. So there's that. I thought that was kind of an important thing to think about. And then one of the things that helps me stay sane professionally is the preventative work, the upfront work that I do when I'm starting to work with a client, when I'm thinking about whether or not I'm going to take on a case, especially a retained case. This really only applies to retained cases. And that's make sure that my engagement letter, my contract, is rock solid and covers everything I need it to cover. So for instance, we're talking about making sure that you can get late fees if they're not paying on time, and that you can get paid only after you have, you're only going to get paid before you have delivered that final report. It's, in lots and lots of other businesses out there, it's completely acceptable for you to say, sorry, I need to be compensated in full before you're going to get this product, because you're selling a product. You are creating something of huge value, and you need to be able to be in a position where you can say, this thing of huge value, I need to get paid for, and I need to get paid for reliably, and I need to get paid for it before before you see it. Um, sure, there's going to be exceptions to that all the time. I have attorneys myself who, I've worked with for, a decade, and so I know they pay me on time every single time, and I'm not going to sweat the small stuff with them. But somebody brand new, I'm absolutely going to bring in this engagement letter. Another thing that I always make sure to put in there is that I'm going to be compensated and my work is going to be done professionally, whether or not I'm finding what they thought they were looking for, or whether or not I'm finding something else that they didn't know existed, or that they, were maybe afraid I wouldn't find. We, especially in workplace cases, uh, or sometimes even in family law cases, domestic cases, we can come across information that they didn't expect us to find, or we can look and look and look and end up not finding that one thing that they were so hoping we could find.
Yeah, and
Um,
there's one of
yeah.
those, to kind of shore up that point. One of my oldest, bestest lawyer clients, I never, ever, ever ask for a retainer because I know I'm going to be paid and I'm going to be paid well. Um, I've got another lawyer client that I work with on a regular basis, have for the past 10 years. And that lawyer always gives me an upfront retainer. He's like, this is just how we do business. I find that the upfront money thing can be a pretty good way to weed out bad clients. If somebody wants
Absolutely.
to argue about that, you probably don't want to spend too much time working for them in the first place. So that's one thing. And there was another point I was going to make. It's gone.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah.
I did not used to have this in my contract, and I'm not gonna. You don't have to read the whole thing, but I just want to highlight for you how important it is in this, these days, to have something spelled out that can protect you um, from claims that you aren't doing things properly, especially when it comes to all of the various laws and regulations concerning protected information. Personally identifying information is gold, especially in this age of identity theft being rampant. And as long as you are taking care to do things properly, you need to be protected. And unfortunately, lots of times your bond or your insurance won't cover you. And so that's why I put this in there, to make sure that my clients know that, especially if they're a law firm, my clients know that the work I do is covered by them. I'm an extension of their office, and I need to know that they are covering me for whatever kind of research that I'm doing. As well, I need to know that they are covering me for the long term. So, if a case closes, whether it's a criminal defense case or a family law, or usually this is more relevant for workplace cases. If the case closes and 2-3 years later, I'm called on to, if I'm called on just to hand over my files, that's no big deal. But if I'm called on to do a a follow-up investigation, or to meet with attorneys and debrief what my investigation included, or to testify, I need to be compensated for that, and I need to be compensated at the rate that is my current going rate. I think that's, if you don't include that, you can get into a situation where they can say, well, it wasn't in your contract, so we need you to just come in and testify about this, and it's on your, it's your dime. And lastly, the thing that I make sure to put in my engagement letter is something about deposit, something about getting paid, getting a retainer up front, and spelling out exactly what that retainer looks like, so that you can be clear whether or not a portion of that retainer will be returned to the client if the work is, if you spend less time than you thought. Recently, this exchange happened between Brian and the guy from Cornerstone Intel, which I thought was super useful. Just having a retainer is super important, and not having to chase people for money is, super, super important. I think that, Hal, you have had lessons with this as well.
Oh, I've had painful lessons with this, and put that back up on the screen if you don't mind, because
Sure, no
for
problem.
the folks in the course today, Cornerstone Intel and Brian Willingham are two of the best investigators I've ever dealt with. I've worked with both of them. I've sat in person with them, spent time with them. Jason is a super good guy. He works out in
Yeah,
Lincoln, Texas. Brian works out of New York. He's probably one of the absolute best due diligence guys in the country. If you're on Twitter, note these two Twitter handles and try and follow them if you get a chance, because there's some really good stuff going back and forth between them and among the group of investigators. But they're two that you probably need to follow. I think so.
yeah, and I actually put up, I don't know if you can see my screen now.
Yep.
I made some links there to, of course, Brian's blog. I think that their lessons about how to run your practice, and things like having checklists, and having systems in place for what you do every time you do X kind of investigation. I think you can get good lessons about those things and how important that is from people like Brian at Diligencia and Tamara Thompson at PI Buzz, certainly from Pursuit and from PI Education, from Professional Investigator Training, which we do, and from the Hetherington Group. Those are my go-to people.
And leave
And
leave leave Brian's up there for a second.
yeah,
And this is as will happen in these webinars, this is turning into the monthly meeting of the Mutual Admiration Society. um, we've kind of skipped a topic that is we'll get back to if we have time, but we've moved into the idea of take time for development.
Yeah.
For people that are trying to get into this business, trying to get into the PI business, trying to break into the business, Brian Willingham's blog is one of the absolute best places to go. Pursuit Magazine, I think, is a really good place to go for the same reason. It's a way to kind of educate yourself about the business, how it works, how people charge, how people conduct themselves, those kind of things. We're right past the halfway mark for the webinar today, which means I'm getting shouted at by the staff saying, put a plug in for PI Education. PI Education, PIeducation.com. We provide continuing education for professional investigators. We also provide master classes for investigators. And if you get a chance, check us out. I've also been told by Stephanie 3 times now, because I don't pay attention as much as I should. We are giving a discount code for the holiday season. This will be good from today until the end of the year. It's Merry17, capital MERRY 17. If you use that discount code on PI Education, you'll get a 15% discount, and that's not a small chunk of change. So Merry17, capital MERRY 17. And now I'm going to go back to Eli and let you continue with bragging about PI Education.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that it is super important to remember that continuing education is not just about staying certified, not just about those credits. That's important, sure, but it should certainly improve your skills or help you see your business in new ways. Sometimes state associations can provide really valuable continuing education. Sometimes not so much. Some of us live in states where our state association doesn't do that great a job, unfortunately. And that's where PI Education and Pursuit and those other blogs come in handy, is to really supplement that knowledge and give you some good new ideas, help you branch out, help you understand new things, help you
And go ahead and pull up professional investigator training too. This is a product that Eli has put together, and it's I've been through the course. It's fantastic. Here's the thing: PI Education, the company that I run with Jim McLeod and the entire team here. We decided on a new motto a couple of years ago, and it was education because you want to, not because you have to.
That's
And
awesome.
the idea is we want to provide education that is useful, not just because you get credit for it, but it's useful. It gives you something you can use that day. And that's one of the reasons we do these webinars. It's like we want to give our constituents, the people that we deal with on a daily basis through Pursuit and through PI Education, hey, here's some things you can do today to make your life a little bit easier, to make your work a little bit easier, to be more productive. And Eli sharing the snippets from his retainer. These webinars are recorded. That snippet is going to be on the webinar. I'm sure we can get some of that language
Absolutely.
from Eli if we need it, and we'll make that available to you. But those kinds of things are what we try to do here, is make it something that you can actually use. So I think staying on top of professional development is painfully important. There are some PI organizations around the country that do a fantastic job of building community and doing really good education. I'm thinking specifically of FAPI down in Florida. They do a really good job of building a community and providing, I think, top quality educational offerings for their people. North Carolina Private Investigator Association, they do a great job in the same way. They've got a good community of people. They support each other. They help each other. I was in, where was I? Iowa this summer for a conference with the Iowa professional investigators, and they blew me away. They were so eager to help each other with tips and tricks. There was a new lady in the group who was a brand new investigator, and she kind of timidly asked a question, and several people answered her right there on the floor. And then there was a line of people waiting to talk to her after the session because
That's
they
awesome.
all wanted to help. And that's what a good community does. So
Yeah. I would add to that how that state associations and national, to some extent, like the National Defense Investigators Association or NCISS, I would say that belonging to and being active in those associations is helpful in two other ways. One, it helps you to stay in touch with other investigators that you can call on to farm out stuff that you don't want to do yourself or that you can't do yourself. We all need people who can take parts of work that we don't understand or are not our area of expertise. And in addition to that, being a part of those associations is a great way to get a mentor who can help you navigate some new area of investigation or who can just help you get started if you're just getting started. But also, if you have more experience, to be a mentor for somebody else. Giving back to other investigators who are just getting started is a crucial piece of this work, not only because it keeps you sharp and helps you redefine what's important to you about the work, but it's just the right thing to do. I mean, it makes so much sense. And if you're not there to give back, it's so much harder for people coming up.
Absolutely, and one of the best examples, when we've been, like, bragging on this young lady incessantly for the past couple of months, but Rochelle Davis, she joined us on the webinar last month. She's new to the business relatively, but she's super smart, she's super engaged, and she has been very open on her blog about the process of trying to become a good investigator. She's talked openly about how difficult it is to figure out how to run a business, how difficult it is to get clients, how difficult it is to keep track of those things. So she has put herself in a position to be a thought leader in this industry just by sharing what she's going through. So another new investigator comes along and runs across Rochelle Davis's blog, and she's at New Hope Investigations over in Missouri. Um, it's a wealth of information. It's a wealth of good stuff, and those are the kind of people that we like to surround ourselves with, is people that are willing to share.
Yeah.
Another thing you can do, and this is a direct call out for Pursuit Magazine, if you have an expertise, if you have something to say, pitch Kim Green an article. She's always looking for good articles. Pitch to Pursuit Magazine. If you go to pursuitmag.com, there's a Write for Us tab at the top. It tells you exactly what we're looking for, how to get in touch with Kim, and pitch stories to her. So feel free to do that. And here's the thing. I think, Eli, you'll probably vouch for me on this. When you write a story for Pursuit Magazine or any other publication, be it the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, your local organization's newsletter, whatever it happens to be, people see that. And it gives you kind of instant credibility to be the guy that wrote the thing about the thing.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you don't have to be the person who wrote the stuff about everything, right? It makes so much sense to share and not keep everything to yourself. There are highly technical pieces of work that I have spent years figuring out how to do that I'm not going to share with my colleagues because they would take too long to explain. Uh, and because that's part of how I make my living, but those are very small in comparison to the vast majority of the lessons and tips and tricks and all the things that I've accumulated over the years. I worked with a handful of local investigators a couple years ago who also were members of the State Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. And we put together I think 2 or 3 page PDF guide for people here in Oregon on how to get everything you needed to get for a criminal defense case. So it ran through all the fax numbers you needed to know to get records from this or that agency. It ran through the best protocols to use for getting public records from this or that court. And we try and keep it up to date. But collaborating like that makes such a difference, not only because, then people can have the information they need to help you out, but also, it just helps replenish the stock of people who are available to do good work in this field. Nothing detracts from the field more than people who are running off half-cocked, if you will.
Yeah, no doubt. And another thing that I think is important to point out, we've mentioned a couple times being a member of an organization. Eli and I met through the internet. Number one, I found his business card and I was like, dude, this guy's got the best graphic designer in the world. Number two, we met through the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, which is how we both know Brian Willingham and several other fine people that we know in this business. The interesting thing is we all three are private investigators, but we all three do pretty much completely different work. There's some overlap, of course, but Brian does primarily due diligence work. I do primarily criminal defense work. Eli does, the last time we spoke, you were doing a lot of the forensic work, but you know, you
Workplace
do
stuff. I do a lot of
work
workplace and family
workplace
law.
investigations. So here's the thing. We've all kind of either very thoughtfully decided on a specific expertise that we're going to talk about. That's what we do, or we've stumbled into that specific expertise. That's what we do. But Eli, did you see the Netflix series Making a Murderer?
No, I heard it was good, but I didn't see it.
Okay, it was fantastic. There's a private investigator in there that it's awful to watch. It's painful to watch. He basically talks his client into confessing to a crime. He's the kid's criminal defense investigator. It's horrible, but uh, those kinds of things can give the industry a bad name. One thing that I notice that gives the industry a bad name is when a private investigator has on their curriculum vitae that they are experts in 50 different things. When they go into court and say that they're qualified to testify as an expert on voice stress analysis, micro expressions, body language, handwriting analysis, blood spatter analysis, any manner of different things. I watched a PI get up on the stand one time, and the district attorney looked at his CV and he says, "Wow, you're an expert at a lot of things." The guy said, "Yes, I am." He said, he went through his education. He'd taken a seminar on this and a seminar on that and a seminar. And since he took a seminar, he called himself an expert. Well, the DA finally, when he got through the whole list of all the things in which he was expert, he said, "Let me ask you this: which one pays the best?" And the guy's credibility was like totally destroyed because he looked like a fool. Pick one thing, two, three things that you do, focus on those. Be the guy or the girl that does that thing. Be an expert. That doesn't mean you can't do surveillance work. That doesn't mean you can't do, background research. It doesn't mean you can't do those things, but have the one thing that you focus on that is your niche, that is your thing that you do. That's just a bit of advice from me.
Absolutely. That's just really strong advice. I think that um, there is a certain pull in the industry to specialize and um, to try and monetize your skills in different ways. And I certainly found myself being, seduced, if you will, by the opportunities to get certified in this or that or the other thing. And at a certain point, I just said, you know what? This is dumb. There's only so much you can actually be a specialist in. And over the years, I've dropped a lot of things from my CV and from my you know constellation of things I'm cultivating. Um, and I focus in on just a handful of things I know I can do well. Which brings me to the other important thing that I know is something that Hal values, and all y'all of their value, is getting really good at saying no. Not only saying no to all these new things you can learn, certainly continuing education is super important, but you you there it makes a lot of sense to focus in on a handful of things. But saying no to potential clients who you know in your heart are going to be a nightmare. Saying no to a piece of work that another investigator wants you to do that is going to be incredibly stressful are just not going to pay well enough, or is outside your area of expertise. You think, well, maybe I could do that. No, maybe is not gonna work when you're on the stand, and you have to, back up what you've done.
Yeah, that's right. And you can get lost in chasing those little things, the sidetrack things, and what happens. We've talked about how the work comes in stages. So you get really busy, you get really unbusy, and the unbusy times it's really easy to start freaking out and think, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay the mortgage next month? Anyone who owns their own business has been at that spot at some point. It happens, but those are the times that the odd surveillance job that is going to be a pain comes along, and they offer a lot of money, and that's not what you do, but you're like, I could really use that money right now, and you take that thing, and then the very next day a call comes in for a case that you would have loved, that you were the guy for, the girl for, and your expertise would have been very useful, but now you've tied yourself up on that other thing. When you say no to things, other opportunities pop up along the way, if you
Yeah.
judiciously think about it and kind of plan your way through it. Let's move on through this outline because we're getting really close on time. We've got about 7 minutes left here.
I'm
Talk about-
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling like we can take some questions at some point soon. We're getting close to the time. If we have some questions, I think we've covered most of what we want to talk about. But if you have other things, Hal, that you really want to cover, awesome. Let's go for it.
Yeah, I think we'll kind of work through our list here. We did have one lady that said that Eli, you seem very personable,
Oh, well,
and that you should take that as a compliment that it was meant to be. So that's
that's nice.
that's where we are today. So moving on the list here, tips and tricks and random stuff to remember. And this is talking about keeping a personal archive. Talk to me a little bit, Eli, about how you keep yourself organized and how you give some tips and tricks.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a whole lot to share here other than um, my self-knowledge is my self-awareness is pretty high, and my compassion for my total inability to be able to retain information, um, the way that some of my colleagues and certainly professionals that I look up to can. I have found that I need to, if I'm going to be able to reliably recall important information, I need to have it stored in a way that is easy for me to access and that I can go back to the same way every time. Um, and that, the other reason that that's really crucial for a practice like mine, where I'm doing workplace cases and then I'm doing family law and then I've got something else, and going back and forth between different things, is that I might not have a case where I need information X for 2 more years. But then when I need information X, I really need it. And I need to be able to go back to my notes quickly and easily and say, where did where do I go to get the list of all the hospitals in the state and what their certifications are and how to contact each one? Where does that, I can't have a situation where I'm spending half an hour trying to find that information again after I had it at the tip of my fingers 2 years ago. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. You've got to have some things that you keep um, tied down like that. I'm going to share my screen real quick because I think this might be helpful for some folks. Do you see that on there, Eli?
yeah,
Okay, so Precedent, the URL is precedent.com, preceden.com. It is a timeline building software. They do a really good job of giving you useful tools. So the timeline is like any other timeline you would use. It gives you dates and date ranges and specific things. But the really fun thing about it is you can put different timelines in the same in the same window. So if you've got 5 witnesses that are talking about one thing, you can see what all of them have to say and kind of where they match up, where they don't match up.
Nice.
The other thing I like about it is, as you're keying in the information and keying notes, um, Precedent allows you to see the note view at the bottom as well. Another tool that I use to kind of keep my head straight is Simple Mind. It is a mind mapping app. It's a way to kind of organize things. We've used it at trial a couple of times to keep people on track with different theories of cases and themes. This next one is probably, I think, the most used of the tips and tricks I share on a regular basis. Evernote. The functionality of Evernote is super crazy good. You can you can clip things from the internet, put them in folders, put them in stacks, put them in notebooks. You can upload files, PDFs that you get there while you're working on a case. You can upload interviews. You can upload photographs, all this stuff. Keep it organized and share it with the team and have it be protected. And the team can. I've got a couple of attorneys that use Evernote pretty much for everything, including at trial. They use it as their trial notebook. So
Highly, highly recommended from me too.
yeah, you can actually search Evernote, your entire Evernote catalog, for very detailed stuff, like at a real granular level. The last tip I'm going to show, and this is a product that I have not gotten into as much as I would like, but it's called Airtable. And Airtable, they say it's basically a database meets a spreadsheet. So it's a database uh, type of product. But one of the things I use a lot in my
Nice.
work
Kanban.
is what Eli just talked about is Kanban flow. It's I use the old school like post-it notes on a whiteboard method, but you can kind of keep track of where you are in the process of a project. Airtable has a Kanban or Kanban flow built into it, so you can tell where you are in a project, what's been done, what witness has been interviewed, what witness needs to be located, those kind of things. Just little organizational tools, and you can also um, upload files into Airtable that can be shared back and forth between team members, and do it that way. So again, Airtable, Evernote. If you're not using Evernote, you need to. It's such a useful tool, and so many attorneys use it that it's a really good way to share information back and forth. Again, Simple Mind, kind of a mind mapping program that lets you keep track of different themes and theories. And then finally, the one that I showed you last, and this is of the timeline programs I've used, this is by far my favorite because it's easy to see, it's easy to read, and they've got the note taking function there, so you can see kind of what happened and the details at the end of it. We are pushing up against, actually just crossed over the 2 o'clock mark for us, so I'm going to stop sharing this screen right now. And Eli, thank you so very much
Thank
for
you, Hal.
joining us
All right.
today and being a part of the webinar. And I think we'll probably task you to come back and join us again if you don't mind.
Love to, anytime.
All right, brother. Everybody that joined us, thanks so much for joining in. Again, we're giving away a discount code that will get you 15% off of any education you buy from PI Education from now until the end of the year. That is Mary 17, capital MERRY 17. That's the discount code when you go to PI Education. Key that in, you'll get 15% off anything you take for the rest of the year. Thanks so much for joining us. Everybody have a happy holidays, and we'll see you after the first of the year.